The sky was a bruised shade of gray, an eerie stillness hanging over the city like the last breath before a scream. Matthew Hayes stood in the middle of what used to be Main Street, his grip tightening on the baseball bat in his hand. The once bustling road was littered with overturned cars, shattered glass, and bodies, some motionless, others stirring with unnatural twitching. The scent of rot clung to the air, thick and putrid. It had started like any other day. Matthew, a former paramedic, had just finished a late shift at the hospital when the first cases rolled in, patients convulsing, eyes clouded over, veins darkening beneath their skin. The doctors had no explanation. Then the chaos erupted. Screams echoed through hallways, nurses fled, and those once thought to be dead rose with an insatiable hunger. The infection spread like wildfire. Now, just a week later, the city was gone. Matthew adjusted the straps of his backpack, scanning the street for movement. He wasn't alone. Somewhere out there, others had survived, but trust was a commodity rarer than food. The undead weren't the only monsters left in the world. A faint rustling from a nearby alley sent a jolt through his spine. He swung his bat up, heart hammering against his ribs. A figure stumbled into view, small, frail, and very much alive. A girl, no older than 10, with tangled blonde hair and wide, terrified eyes. Her clothes were filthy, streaked with grime and dried blood, but she wasn't bitten. "Please, help," she croaked, her voice barely above a whisper. Matthew hesitated. Bringing a child along was a liability. More mouths to feed, more noise to attract the undead. But he couldn't just leave her. His mind flashed back to his own daughter, Emily, taken from him in the first days of the outbreak. If she was still alive, he had to believe someone would help her. Kneeling, he softened his voice. "What's your name?" "Ava," she whispered. "Okay, Ava. We have to move. Can you walk?" She nodded, though her limbs trembled with exhaustion. A sudden, guttural growl caught through the silence. The hairs on Matthew's neck stood on end. The sound was too close. He turned sharply, eyes darting across the ruined street. A figure lurched from behind a wrecked taxi. Then another. And another. Their bodies were in varying states of decay, some fresh, others skeletal with tattered flesh barely holding them together. Their hollow eyes locked onto Matthew and Ava, and a collective moan erupted from their throats. They were coming. Matthew grabbed Ava's hand and ran. Their footsteps pounded against the cracked pavement as the undead surged forward. Matthew's mind raced. He needed shelter, somewhere defensible, somewhere close. The department store up ahead, its shattered windows gaping like broken teeth, was the best bet. He hoisted Ava onto his back and sprinted through the debris-strewn entrance. Inside, the place was ransacked, shelves overturned, merchandise scattered. A faint stink of decay lingered. He slammed the door shut behind them, wedging a fallen shelf against it. Ava clung to his jacket, her breath coming in sharp, terrified gasps. Outside, the zombies slammed into the glass, their bodies pressing against it in a mindless frenzy. Cracks spiderwebbed across the surface. "Come on," Matthew whispered, leading Ava deeper into the store. They moved cautiously through the aisles, past gutted electronics and looted food shelves. The emergency exit was their only chance. If they could slip through, they might make it to the rooftops and find a safer route. But the store wasn't empty. A figure stepped out from the shadows near the back. A woman, rifle raised, her face gaunt but alert. "Drop the bat," she ordered. Matthew tensed. He didn't want another fight, not with a child in tow. But he also wasn't about to let his guard down. "We're not infected," he said, lifting his hands slightly. "Just looking for a way out." The woman studied him, then glanced at Ava. Her grip on the rifle loosened just a fraction. "You have a death wish bringing a kid into this mess," she muttered. "Yeah, well," Matthew exhaled, "not much choice, is there?" For a moment, silence stretched between them. Then the woman sighed and slung the rifle over her shoulder. "Name's Riley. You want out of here? You're gonna need help." Outside, the glass shattered. The dead were coming. And time was running out. The crash of glass sent a jolt of adrenaline through Matthew's body. The moans of the undead swelled as jagged shards rained onto the floor. The department store was no longer a refuge, it was a trap. Riley moved first, grabbing Ava's arm and pulling her toward the back exit. "Move! Now!" Matthew followed, gripping his bat tight. Shadows flickered along the broken aisles as the first of the undead tumbled through the shattered window, twisted bodies contorting unnaturally as they scrambled over the wreckage. Ava whimpered, stumbling as Riley dragged her forward. Matthew scooped the girl into his arms without stopping. "The exit's locked," Riley called over her shoulder. "Had to barricade it when I got here." Matthew cursed under his breath. They needed another way out. He scanned the dimly lit store. The employee area, there had to be another door. This way. He turned sharply, heading past the abandoned registers toward a door labeled staff only. He kicked it open, revealing a narrow hallway lined with old lockers and cleaning supplies. The emergency exit sign flickered at the far end. Riley ran ahead, checking the door. Damn it. Chained shut from the outside. The first zombie reached the doorway behind them, its blood-stained fingers clawing at the frame. Its mouth gaped open, blackened teeth gnashing. More swarmed behind it, their numbers growing. "We don't have time," Matthew growled. He scanned the room. There, an air vent, partially open near the ceiling. It wasn't ideal, but it was a way out. "Riley, boost Ava up," he ordered. The woman hesitated, then nodded. She hoisted the trembling girl toward the vent. "Come on, kid. You can do this." Ava's small hands grabbed the edge, and Matthew pushed her from below. She wiggled into the dark tunnel, disappearing inside. A sickening crunch behind them. One of the zombies had forced its way through the door, its skull cracked from the impact. It let out a shrill, inhuman cry. Matthew turned, swinging his bat with all his strength. The blow connected with a sickening thud, sending the corpse sprawling. But the others weren't far behind. "You next," Riley said, motioning to the vent. "No time," Matthew shot back. "We hold them off together." She didn't argue. Raising her rifle, Riley fired. The gunshot echoed through the small space, deafening. The nearest zombie's head snapped back, a fine mist of blood spraying the wall. But more kept coming. Matthew swung again, shattering another skull. Blood splattered his face, warm and foul. "Not gonna last much longer," Riley muttered, reloading. Matthew glanced at the vent. Ava's face peeked down, her terrified eyes wide. "Go, Matt," she begged. Another zombie lunged. Matthew sidestepped, but it grabbed his arm, its teeth snapping inches from his skin. A single shot rang out. The zombie's head exploded in a shower of gore, its body slumping to the floor. Riley grabbed Matthew's collar and shoved him toward the vent. "Move your ass." He didn't argue. He grabbed the edge, pulling himself up. The metal groaned beneath his weight, but he forced himself through, twisting into the tight crawlspace. Riley followed, her breath ragged as she yanked her rifle in behind her. Below, the dead swarmed the narrow hallway. Bloodied fingers scraped at the walls, but the undead were too slow. Too stupid. Matthew exhaled, crawling forward. Ava's small hand reached for his, and he took it. "Where does this lead?" Riley panted. "Hopefully, out." They crawled forward, the air thick with dust. The metallic walls groaned beneath them, threatening to give way. Then, light. A small, rusted grate at the end of the tunnel. Matthew kicked it open, dropping down into a dim alleyway. The moment his feet hit the ground, he turned and caught Ava as she slid out. Riley landed beside them, rifle raised. For a second, all was still. The store loomed behind them, the muffled groans of the undead echoing through the vents. "We need to keep moving," Riley said. Matthew nodded. Their luck wouldn't last forever. Nowhere was safe. The alley stretched before them, narrow and silent, framed by crumbling brick walls covered in old graffiti. The city beyond was a wasteland, shattered windows, burned-out vehicles, and the distant, ever-present moans of the undead. Matthew adjusted his grip on the bat, scanning their surroundings. "We can't stay here." Riley nodded. "There's an old parking garage a few blocks over. I hold up there before the store. Should still be clear." Ava clutched Matthew's arm. "Will there be food?" He exchanged a glance with Riley. "We'll find something," he said, though he wasn't sure if it was a promise or a lie. They moved quickly, sticking to the alley shadows. Every sound was a potential threat, the crunch of broken glass underfoot, the rustling of trash caught in the wind. Then, they heard something else. A voice. Low. Strained. Human. Matthew held up a hand, signaling them to stop. The sound came from a side street, barely visible through a chain-link fence. "Please," the voice whispered. "Help me." A man was slumped against an abandoned dumpster, clutching his stomach. His clothes were torn, soaked in blood. He looked up at them with glassy, desperate eyes. Matthew's instincts screamed danger. The world wasn't kind to the weak anymore. Riley lifted her rifle slightly, her face unreadable. "We don't have time for this." Ava, however, tugged at Matthew's sleeve. "We can't just leave him," she whispered. He knelt beside the man, keeping a careful distance. "You bitten?" The man shook his head quickly. "No. Just stabbed. A group tried to rob me. Left me for dead." Matthew scanned his wound. Deep, but not fatal, yet. He recognized the signs of blood loss. The man wouldn't last long without help. "We have to move," Riley urged. "You know what happens to people who slow you down." Matthew knew. He'd seen it. The man's breathing hitched. "I can help you. I know a safe place. A real one. Food. Weapons." That caught Riley's attention. "Where?" "A subway station. Underground. Not many know about it." He grimaced, gripping his side. "I'll take you there." Matthew hesitated. It could be a trap. But if it wasn't? He sighed, making his decision. "We help him." Riley rolled her eyes, but didn't argue. Matthew pulled the man's arm over his shoulder. "What's your name?" "Jonah," the man coughed. "And if we're gonna survive out here, we'd better move. Fast." As they hurried through the ruins of the city, Matthew couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Something, or someone, was out there. And it wasn't just the dead. The city was unnervingly quiet as Matthew, Riley, Ava, and the wounded man, Jonah, moved through the streets. The eerie silence wasn't comforting, it was the kind that made Matthew's skin crawl. The undead were never quiet for long. Jonah's breath came in ragged gasps, his wounds slowing him down. Blood seeped through his shirt, leaving a trail behind them. It wasn't safe. If the scent didn't attract the dead, someone else might be following. Matthew kept his grip firm around Jonah's waist, half dragging him along. "How much farther?" Jonah gritted his teeth. "Not far, subway's just past that overpass." He nodded toward a crumbling bridge in the distance. "Entrance is hidden." Riley kept scanning the rooftops. "We're being followed," she muttered. Matthew stiffened. "Zombies?" Riley shook her head. "No. Someone's tracking us." Ava gasped, pressing closer to Matthew. Then, the first shot rang out. The bullet smacked into a rusted streetlight, sending sparks flying. Instinct took over. "Get down!" Matthew shouted, shoving Ava behind an overturned car. Riley dove behind an old newspaper stand, her rifle already in her hands. Jonah groaned as he collapsed beside Matthew, struggling to stay conscious. A voice rang out from the rooftops. "Drop your weapons, and we won't kill you." Matthew clenched his jaw. He peeked out, catching a glimpse of their attackers, 4 of them, all dressed in makeshift armor, carrying rifles and machetes. "Bandits," Riley growled. "Figures." A second shot blasted through the air, narrowly missing Matthew's head. "We don't have time for this," Riley muttered, raising her rifle. She fired, and one of the attackers grunted, stumbling back. "Run for the subway." Jonah gasped. "I can get us in." Matthew grabbed Ava, pulling her toward the overpass. Riley laid down cover fire as they sprinted, bullets kicking up dust around them. One of the bandits jumped down from a fire escape, landing in their path. His machete gleamed in the dim light. "Not so fast," he sneered, stepping toward them. Before he could swing, Riley's rifle cracked, and the man dropped like a stone. "Keep moving," she yelled. They reached the overpass, Jonah barely managing to stay on his feet. He pointed to a rusted maintenance hatch beneath a crumbling subway sign. "There." Matthew yanked the door open. Darkness yawned beneath them. No time to hesitate. Riley snapped. One by one, they dropped into the tunnel below. The stench of mildew and decay hit them instantly. Jonah wheezed. "Seal the hatch." Matthew shoved it closed just as another bullet struck the metal, sending a deafening clang through the tunnel. The echoes of angry voices above told them the bandits weren't giving up. But they were safe. For now. Matthew turned to Jonah. "This safe place of yours, it better be real." Jonah smirked weakly. "Oh, it's real. And if we're lucky, we might just survive this." But in the darkness of the subway, something else was waiting. Something hungry. The subway tunnel swallowed them in darkness, the air thick with the scent of mold, rust, and something far worse, death. Matthew clicked on his flashlight, the beam cutting through the murk. The walls were lined with old posters, their edges curling with age. The ground beneath their feet was damp, littered with debris from a world long gone. Riley adjusted her rifle, breathing heavily. "Jonah, if you dragged us down here to die, I swear." "It's real," Jonah muttered, leaning against the tunnel wall. His wound had stopped bleeding as much, but he was weakening fast. "Just keep moving." Ava clutched Matthew's hand, her small fingers trembling. "It's so quiet," she whispered. Too quiet. Matthew knew better than to trust silence. It never lasted. They followed the tracks, their footsteps echoing through the tunnel. Jonah had said the safe zone was deep underground, an old maintenance bunker repurposed by survivors. But the farther they walked, the more unsettling the surroundings became. The walls bore fresh scratch marks. Bloody handprints streaked across old tile. Then, they saw the bodies. Dozens of them, strewn along the tunnel like discarded ragdolls. Some were fresh, others half-decayed. All bore the same wounds, deep, jagged gashes, as if something had torn into them. Ava whimpered. Who did this?" Matthew felt his stomach tighten. "Not who," he muttered. "What?" A deep, guttural sound echoed through the tunnel. A slow, wet clicking. Something was down here with them. Jonah's face went pale. "Oh no." Riley snapped her rifle up. "What exactly is oh no?" Jonah swallowed hard. "There's something new." Matthew's grip tightened on his bat. "New?" A sound, low and inhuman, rumbled from the darkness ahead. It was a growl, but not like the undead. It was different. Then, the shadows moved. 2 yellow eyes flickered in the dark, reflecting the flashlight's beam. The figure that emerged wasn't just another walker, it was something worse. It was taller, its limbs stretched unnaturally long. Its mouth hung open, jaw unhinged, revealing rows of jagged teeth. Its skin was stretched thin, as if decay had twisted it into something else entirely. It wasn't just a zombie. It was evolving. The creature let out a rasping screech, and suddenly, the corpses around them twitched. They weren't corpses at all. They were waiting. The trap had been set. "Run!" Jonah yelled. The tunnels exploded into chaos. The tunnel erupted with movement as the corpses they had mistaken for lifeless husks jerked to life. Their heads snapped toward the group in eerie unison, and then they moved. Not like the sluggish, shambling undead they had encountered before, these things were fast. Matthew grabbed Ava, hoisting her into his arms as his body moved on instinct. Go! Now! Riley fired the first shot, the gun's flash briefly illuminating the nightmarish figures closing in. The bullet struck one in the chest, but the creature barely reacted. It cocked its head unnaturally, eyes burning with a sickly yellow glow. Then it lunged. Shit! Riley cursed, barely dodging as the thing swung at her with terrifying speed. She fired again, this time aiming for the head. The bullet tore through its skull, and it finally dropped. Jonah stumbled forward, nearly collapsing from exhaustion. Left. The bunker entrance is down this way. Matthew followed without hesitation, gripping Ava tightly. Riley covered them, her rifle snapping off shots at the creatures as they skittered forward, some crawling on all fours, others jerking upright like broken puppets. The tunnel trembled as more screeches echoed through the darkness. They weren't alone. There were more. They rounded a corner, nearly colliding with a rusted metal door set into the tunnel wall. Jonah slapped his palm against it. Let me in. Silence. Then, a metallic clunk. The door cracked open, revealing a pair of wary eyes behind it. You led them here, a voice hissed from the other side. Jonah gasped, barely able to stand. Just let us in, or we all die. A heartbeat of hesitation. Then, the door wrenched open. Matthew shoved Ava inside first, then Riley and Jonah. He turned just as one of the creatures lunged at him, its skeletal fingers clawing for his throat. He swung his bat, catching it in the side of the head. The creature snarled, momentarily dazed. Then something bigger loomed behind it. The creature from before, the evolved one, emerged from the shadows, its yellow eyes locking onto Matthew with eerie intelligence. It didn't moan like a normal zombie. It watched. Calculated. Matthew took a shaky step back. Then it smiled. The door yanked shut, cutting off the sight of it as the bunker's locks slid into place. Matthew stumbled back, heart hammering. What the hell was that? The man who had opened the door stared at him grimly. You don't know? He exhaled, glancing at Jonah. You should have told them. Told us what? Riley snapped. Jonah wiped sweat from his brow, his face pale. That was one of the new ones. Ava's small voice barely rose above a whisper. They're changing, aren't they? The silence that followed was answer enough. The undead were evolving. And the world had just gotten even more dangerous. The bunker was cramped, dimly lit by flickering emergency lights. Rusted metal walls and old supply crates lined the space, giving it a claustrophobic feel. The air was thick with sweat, blood, and the faint metallic scent of old decay. Matthew leaned against the wall, still catching his breath. Riley stood near the entrance, her rifle trained on the door, as if expecting it to burst open at any second. Ava clung to his side, her wide eyes still filled with terror. The man who had let them in, a middle-aged survivor with graying hair and a thick beard, crossed his arms. You shouldn't have come here. Jonah, still weak from blood loss, glared at him. You'd rather we died out there? You might have led those things right to us, the man shot back. They're not like the others. They don't forget. Matthew's mind was still racing. That thing in the tunnel, the way it had watched him, the way it had smiled, it wasn't just another mindless corpse. It was something worse. Riley finally spoke. What do you mean, they don't forget? The man sighed and ran a hand over his face. They remember. They learn. Those yellow-eyed freaks, they're not just walkers anymore. They hunt. They strategize. His voice dropped lower. And if it saw you, it'll be back. Silence settled over the room. Ava was the first to break it. So, nowhere is safe anymore? No one answered her. Matthew looked at Jonah. You said this place was a safe zone. How many people are here? Jonah hesitated. There were more. Maybe 20 when we first found this place. He swallowed hard. But the numbers kept dropping. People disappearing. We thought it was just the dead, but now I think. They were taken, the older man finished. Matthew frowned. Taken? By who? The man's expression darkened. Not who. What? Riley shook her head. That doesn't make sense. Zombies don't take prisoners. Jonah's hands trembled. These ones do. The weight of his words sent a chill through Matthew's bones. He thought back to the bodies in the tunnel, half-eaten, yet not completely devoured. Like something had been storing them. Something was changing in the undead. A distant sound made everyone freeze. A slow, deliberate clank. It came from above. Ava whimpered, pressing herself into Matthew's side. Riley slowly raised her rifle, her face tense. Then, another sound. A scraping noise, like nails dragging along metal. It was at the ventilation shaft. Matthew's stomach twisted. They're here. The bearded man grabbed a shotgun from a nearby crate. Get ready. Ava looked up at Matthew, fear in her voice. What do we do? He didn't know. But one thing was certain, this wasn't just about survival anymore. The new undead weren't just hunting. They were waiting. And now, they had found them. The metallic scraping at the ventilation shaft sent a chill through the bunker. It wasn't just the usual clawing of the undead, this was calculated. Deliberate. Matthew's grip tightened around his bat as he exchanged a glance with Riley. She had her rifle trained on the vent, her breathing slow and controlled. The bearded man, Jonah had called him Grant, loaded his shotgun with steady hands. If they get in, we don't run. We fight. Jonah, pale from blood loss, shook his head. You don't get it. If they want in, we won't stop them. The new ones, they're smart. A slow, deliberate thump echoed above them. Then another. Matthew's stomach twisted. They were testing the bunker. Listening. Ava clung to his side. I don't like this, she whispered. Neither did he. A metallic screech rang through the bunker as the vent above them bent inward. Something was prying it open. Grant didn't hesitate. He fired a blast from his shotgun, the force rattling the room. The vent dented, the sound of scattering movement above them echoing like rats in the walls. For a moment, silence. Then, footsteps. Not from the vents. From outside. Matthew turned toward the door, his pulse spiking. Shadows moved beyond the reinforced metal. Slow, purposeful footsteps. And then. A voice. You can't hide forever. The words were slow, rasping, almost human, but wrong. Twisted. Ava gasped, burying her face in Matthew's chest. Riley's hands tightened on her rifle. Jonah shook his head, terror etched across his face. They're talking now? Grant cursed under his breath. They've never talked before. Then came the banging. Hard. Rhythmic. Like a war drum against the metal door. They weren't mindless. They weren't just attacking. They were trying to break them. Matthew's mind raced. There another way out? Grant hesitated. Maybe. Old maintenance tunnel, but it's risky. Could be caved in. Better than waiting to die, Riley snapped. Jonah struggled to his feet. We go now. Another screech from the vent. The metal split open, and for a brief second, Matthew saw it, pale skin stretched over an elongated face, yellow eyes burning with something almost sentient. Then it lunged. Riley fired. The creature's head snapped back as it shrieked, but it didn't fall. It clung to the vent, snarling, teeth glistening in the dim light. Grant blasted it with the shotgun. This time, it dropped. No time to hesitate. Matthew grabbed Ava's hand. Go, go! Grant yanked open a rusted hatch in the floor, revealing a dark passage below. The smell of damp stone and rot wafted up. Down, he ordered. One by one, they dropped into the tunnel, the echoes of the pounding above growing more intense. As Matthew landed, pulling Ava close, he heard it. The bunker door buckling. A guttural voice hissing, "Run." And so they did. Down into the dark. Not knowing where it led. Only knowing one thing. The dead were no longer just rising. They were hunting. The end, for now.